Well, good morning and welcome to Cityline, from my kitchen to your home. It is wonderful to connect with you again. We have a great hour ahead of us. Later on, we'll be talking with Tacoma Public Utilities about their Evergreen Options Grant. You don't want to miss that segment. They have a wonderful surprise for small business owners and nonprofits here in the city of Tacoma. The Rainbow Center, Mr. Troy Christensen will be here to talk about the upcoming Black and White Virtual Gala. And then one of my dear sisters, Melanie Denise Cunningham, she's here to talk about the 253 Peace Queen segment that we have here monthly on Cityline. Victoria will be here from the Humane Society with our Forever Pet of the Week. And with me right now is somebody who I do not get to talk to enough. I love her to death because she is the girl next door that does nothing but spread goodness and wisdom at the government level here in Tacoma. I'm talking about Elizabeth Pauli. She is our Tacoma City Manager, and she's here to talk about our City of Tacoma biannual budget. Hello, Elizabeth, and welcome back.
Hello, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
It's just so great to have you. And let's just jump right into it because there's so much to talk about. Tell us about the circumstances surrounding the development of the proposed budget, and if this proposed budget does in fact close our projected gap.
So thank you, Amanda. As you might guess, the development of this budget came at an unprecedented time. We had the COVID-19 pandemic in full force, which created great economic uncertainty and with really no roadmap to follow for what recovery from that is going to look like. The development of this budget also came at a time where there's been unprecedented focus on racial injustice, coupled with a broad community support for transformation. So those were the unique circumstances surrounding this budget development. And the proposed budget does indeed present a balanced budget that closes the budget gap.
Wonderful. So there is a resolution called 40622. And I would like you to talk about how does this factor into all of it? What's the relationship with that budget?
So this is a resolution that was passed by our Tacoma City Council back in June of this year. And this resolution really cemented the City Council's commitment to both the city organization and the city itself becoming anti-racist. And it helped shape our budget development in a couple really important ways. First, it directed staff to keep the anti-racist agenda of the city as a top priority in budget development and as a priority in our economic recovery strategy. So in our budget development, we honored that in a couple of different ways. We required all of our departments to assess their programs and their services using an impact analysis on those anti-racism and equity goals. And those assessments were in turn reviewed by our Office of Equity and Human Rights. So this involved an assessment and review of over 700 programs to ensure the alignment with those goals. We also required each department to develop our first ever, what we call racial equity action plan. So each department has a strategic plan for reaching the equity and anti-racism goals of our city and community.
Wow, that's just incredible. And when you talk about prioritizing anti-racism in this proposed budget, because I have to tell you, if I had unlimited funds, I, with my heart, would want all of the money to go to it. So how did you prioritize that with equality? How did you make that equal?
So what we did is, using the analysis and assessment that I just mentioned, we looked at how do we maintain programs that support those goals? How do we maybe modify existing programs or redirect funding to better serve those goals. And I think in this proposed budget, you'll see some really great examples of that in the work done and the programs that are being delivered by our Community and Economic Development Department and by our Neighborhood and Community Services Department.
So how do you go about, in addition to what you just said, closing a $40 million general fund gap, as we've read in the news and seen on social media? That is no easy feat. And I think if I were to ask you what keeps you awake at nighttime, that might kind of be on the list. So how did you do it?
Well, the first thing, and importantly, we listened to the council and the community so that we had as clear of an understanding as possible of what was important to the community. Second, we followed best practices for maintaining strong, sustainable financial management. So this led us to a budget where we believe we did four things. We maintained fiscal or financial sustainability. We set a structure that will support transformation of services within the city. We maintained at the same time the ability to deliver the equitable essential services that the community relies on and that we don't talk about a whole lot sometimes. At the same time, we believe that this budget provides a sound way of responding to and recovering from the impacts of the pandemic. So we focused on those four areas.
So as departments develop their respective budget proposals for your review, what was their rationale?
So departments presented their budget proposals using that same framework. Again, we understood the impacts because of that analysis had occurred. We understood the impacts of each of the proposals on our primary goals, both the council priorities as well as our transformational anti-racism focus. At the same time, we had to close that gap. So we did use a combination of reductions and in some cases additions to meet those priorities. As a result, we did take reductions in many of our departments, but we believe that where we've reduced, we've retained the focus on those areas that are reflect the council's priorities and the community's priorities.
It is such, I want to pause just for a second and I want to insert a deep breath in here because that's a very hard thing to do, Elizabeth, what you just said. And you are and your team are too humble to even stop and talk about this. But to have to reduce during this time in our world is not something that I know that you take lightly. And I just want to recognize that.
You know, you're not doing all the things that need to be done. And that's hard. That's hard.
So Elizabeth, with that in mind, will there be an opportunity for the community to do a deeper dive into the work within those departments that have had to put into the development of this proposed budget? Will there be a way for them to revisit and say, this is how it looks right now. How are we going to get this done?
Absolutely. Community engagement has been a thread that we've followed through the entirety of our process and are continuing to follow. We have a fun event, hopefully, coming up on October 21st, where we'll do the overview of the budget. We'll share that with the public in a town hall. And we will have some breakout sessions with our council members at that town hall so that there can actually be some conversation around the proposed budget. And I think that that's going to be a great opportunity for the community to engage and not simply hear us so that we can actually interact. And at the same time, our budget office is making themselves available for various community meetings to present the proposed budget and again have some dialogue. We're reopening our balancing act tool, which is an exercise that's online that allows people to go in and suggest how they think the budget should be balanced. And while we've held that exercise earlier in the year and we've incorporated that feedback, we're willing to continue to evaluate the feedback that we get from the public till the end. And there's also community opportunities when we bring the budget ordinance formally to the council for first and second reading. Comment will be taken from the public at that time as well.
So Elizabeth, I just saw a learning opportunity here that you just said when we take it to the council for the first and second reading. So would you describe the process of community comment and then when will it be finalized? What do we need to be listening for?
Sure, there's a couple of formal process pieces that rely on community engagement and community involvement. We're required to have public hearings, on the first of which will be held on October 27th in conjunction with the evening council meeting, and the public can participate by that online, online. On November 2nd, we'll have a second public hearing on the proposed budget. That's then followed by the first reading of the budget ordinance at a council meeting on November 17th, and the second reading on November 24th, where we expect adoption of the budget. But public comment will also be available for those first and second readings.
Perfect. So November 24th is the final reading, and that's when the adoption would happen. So people need to mark their calendars and really be aware of the window of comment and how this rolls forward. Elizabeth, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your uber busy day to spend 13 minutes of sound advice and wisdom and grace with us. And Elizabeth, thank you and your team for all that you do for the city of Tacoma. You are just purely magnificent.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.